Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Pathways. It's great to see people joining.
Yeah, Lydia, why don't you read? Want to wait a minute, see if we get a
I
couple more?
was just, yeah, I gave a pause just to see if we had anybody else joining the waiting room, but I'm more than happy to get going. So let me go ahead and share the PowerPoint, and just as a brief introduction, in case you're unfamiliar with who I am, my name is Lydia Check, and I am a certified wellness practitioner, a health behavior coach, and the director for the wellness program of the Montana Public Health Training Center. And I'm joined with my lovely colleagues, Desiree and Anna, who are here to support and make sure the training is engaging and well-rounded for everybody. And so I want to welcome you in, Kirsten and Aaron. Thank you for joining us. I would hope that with our time today, we could have a conversation about theories in the competencies of wellness work that build trust in the workplace. And I think we all have a lot of lived experience and wisdom as to how these theories really apply in real life and what they look like. And so I'm here to provide the background information. And what I would really like is for us to explore what that means for us in the workplace and how we can bring these theories uh, into our workplace to better build connection and trust with the people that we work with. So with that little preamble, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started on the PowerPoint. If you feel comfortable and you would like to engage, I invite you to um, uh, turn on your camera, and you can even come off mute um, so that we can have kind of a casual conversation about the things that are being presented. Although I understand people are at work and have many things going on. So if you just want to multitask and listen, I totally understand that as well. Okay, so I got the PowerPoint up. I'm just hitting share. And I'm hoping that that popped up for everybody. Let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Thank you
Yep.
for the nods. I appreciate it. And so, welcome to Leading Wellbeing with Trust, Theories That Connect Us. This two-part series through our Pathways sessions is content that we went over during Confluence, the annual public health conference. And I feel as though this information is just so pivotal. It really is the cornerstone of the wellness work that we do. And so I'm hoping that this can act, one, as a review, and two, a time for us to deepen our understanding. And if you weren't with us in person at Confluence, that's totally okay. We also have the intention of just making this information available to the wellness champions that weren't able to be there with us. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to type in chat or just come off mute and ask away. So this year in Confluence, we had the theme of building trust in a changing world through leadership, communication, and technology, which got me asking, how do we build trust in the workplace to facilitate well-being? And what is that connection between trust and workplace wellness. And so I'm hoping that these theories can help answer those questions so that we can enhance the trust, which leads to more vulnerability, which leads to authenticity and well being in the workplace. So today, I really want to touch on those theories and core competencies of wellness leadership. If people would like, we can spend time sharing workplace scenarios that we either imagine or we have lived experience with, and talk about how we can um, activate on the theories and really bring them into the work rather than just keeping the understanding of them. So we're here to reflect on that trust, autonomy, and well-being. And I have a question to start the conversation. And it's kind of a simple one, but it's very important. And why does well-being matter? And for you personally, why does workplace well-being matter? What does that mean for you? And in what ways do you see it in your workplace, maybe? I'm going to pull up chat too so I can see if anybody answers there.
So for me, I think it's important because we spend so much time at work through the day or through the week,
Mhm.
and it's a place that we need to either maintain or continue our health journey. So, and just making sure that we have that space where we can um, feel like our well-being is important to us and to each other in our work environment. So
Mm.
that's my thought.
Awesome, Erin. I really appreciate you bringing that to us. And certainly, you make a great point. We spend a lot of time in our workplaces with our colleagues, and that kind of brings the factor of what does that environment, what impact does that environment have on our well-being, and how can we influence the environment to have a improved impact on our well-being? And so, some whys behind why this is important is that when we don't focus on well being, it leads to burnout and uh, compassion fatigue, and just overall lessens our capacity to show up in the ways that we want to at work. And so the whole presentation is kind of built around this question of when have you felt trusted at work? And I can rephrase it too, just to give people some creative insight. Like, how do we know um, that trust is in the workplace? What does that look like when there's trust in the workplace?
I guess for me, when we're able to kind of have some freedom with our plans, and
Hmm.
it's not like someone's just constantly asking questions and being over you. It's
Hmm.
kind of like go, you know what you need to do, so go do those things, and then you have the freedom to get them done how you see fit.
Yeah, I love that. And I really appreciate you using that word freedom, which really, for me, resonates in autonomy and the ability to self-direct. And so those are some key pieces of the theories that we'll be diving into today. And I just want to pose the idea that trust isn't just a factor of well-being, it really is at the core of workplace wellness. And wellness isn't fluff, it's functional, right? And so, how can we leverage building trust to improve upon the environment of well-being. And so, yep, sorry about that. I just wanted to take a moment and pause on the 6 dimensions of wellness. And I also want to cite where we're pulling our information from today. We are members of the Wellness Alliance, which is the national accrediting body for wellness work. It consists of 2 organizations, the National Wellness Institute and the Wellness Coalition of America, which have now fused into this body that sets the professional core competencies for wellness practitioners. And they have a framework that allows us to understand what is really needed to look at well-being holistically in the workplace. And with that, I have a question. When you think of workplace wellness programs, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What are some initiatives that we typically see for workplace wellness?
The Walk with Ease program, or something that is about more movement.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you picked up on that. There is often an emphasis on physical well-being in the kind of status quo wellness programming. And although movement in the workplace is incredibly important, that only covers one aspect of the dimensions of well-being that would then treat the holistic person. And so as wellness champions, when we're thinking about promoting well-being in the workplace, we might want to have a steps initiative or a group walk at lunch, which is amazing and should not be undervalued. And I think it's important for us to consider how many other dimensions there are for us to work within and promote well-being. So you may have seen in different models, sometimes there's 10 dimensions, sometimes there's 6, sometimes, there's 8, but they all are pointing to the same thing, that it's not just one factor of a person, it's all the factors together and how they integrate that makes up someone's well-being. And so we also have intellectual well-being, occupational well-being, spiritual well-being, social well-being, and emotional well-being. And how this correlates to trust is that when we account for the whole person and create programming, create initiatives that foster well-being in the different dimensions evenly, that helps people feel seen and validated. And when people feel seen and validated, it increases their trust in us. And I think it's important to recognize that not everybody is in the same place in their wellness journey. So while one person might be really interested in goals that increase movement opportunities in the workplace, there may be someone else who is already very proficient at finding movement. And what they're actually needing is nourishing of their occupational wellness, right? And so when we see that need and don't just address the one, that builds that trust. And so I wanted to pose this diagram first to get us started. Are there any questions about the 6 dimensions of wellness as we see it in this diagram? And that's totally okay. It's kind of a visually simple concept. So let me, oop, sorry, I got stuck in the chat and now it's not moving my cursor. So this is some examples of the different dimensions of well-being and what focuses apply to those areas. Because maybe the overall title of the area is a little nebulous, and we may not understand how that applies to our workplace. And so here are some examples of things that focus on the six dimensions. So, intellectual well being is associated with lifelong learning, creativity, problem solving, and just general mental stimulation, maybe having a challenge to learning or developing a new skill. Emotional well being is all about self awareness, so that emotional intelligence and mindfulness about where we are at any given point in time. And it's also associated with resilience and healthy expression of feelings. So there is this touches on communication as well in that emotional area. We have spiritual, which I think can seem sometimes like the most vague, but really when it boils down to with spiritual well-being is how people make sense of their lived experience, what values they have, and how those values inform their purpose. And so finding connection to meaning or something greater than oneself enhances our spiritual well-being. And oftentimes we can connect our purpose with our work. And so there's a huge opportunity for people to explore that sense of purpose in the workplace. We have physical, which we touched on. So that would be the nutrition, physical activity, sleep, and other physical health related behaviors. We have social, which would be meaningful relationships, connection, and community involvement. And finally, occupational, which should absolutely be something that's upheld in our workplaces. And so occupational wellness would correlate to purposeful work. And might see how that kind of ties into that spiritual well-being. So there's some overlap in these areas. They're not separate, but they combined and um, impact one another. And so occupational wellness might also tap on personal fulfillment, work-life harmony, and it also touches on lifelong learning, improving skills that will make our work easier or improve our self-efficacy and our ability to do our jobs. So that's a few examples of how these dimensions of wellness might come through in the workplace. And I'm curious, where might you see some of these dimensions in your current workplace? Is there something that your workplace does really well and you find as an inherent strength to the dynamic of your team or how the environment of the workplace is laid out? And can you find where that falls in these categories? And if you're willing to share, we would love to hear about your experience. So feel free to pop off mute and just let us know.
I don't know where it falls in at, but our team is really supportive of one another, and we try to make sure that we are doing things that are important to each of us,
Mhm.
and that is kind of it helps us to feel like we have meaningful, purposeful work essentially. So we're really good at that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm hearing in your answer both the meaningful relationships piece in supporting one another, and also how that ties into our purposeful work and supporting one another and how that brings us purpose in our role. So thank you for sharing that, Erin. Great insight. So this is just the sum of what we were talking about, that whole person wellness means balancing all six dimensions. and acknowledging that they're interconnected and they collectively shape our well-being. And when we account for each of these 6 dimensions in our workplace programming, we build trust because people feel seen and understood when we meet them where they're at, where the need is. And so these are some ways that we can break down how to build trust by engaging these different dimensions. And as an example, for intellectual well being, we can foster psychological safety where ideas and feedback are valued without judgment. So when we create a work environment where our colleagues, our team members, um, are feel safe in speaking up and saying, "Hey, I have this idea," or "You know what? I'm really being challenged with this, and I would like some help." When we create that space for them to be honest, that creates that psychological safety, which then makes communication more fluid so that we can brainstorm together and problem solve. When we model emotional honesty and empathy, when we are vulnerable and authentic, that builds trust and emotional well being because people are able to empathize with us, we're able to empathize with them, and there's this understanding of where we are. And a big piece to empathy and vulnerability is extending active listening. And when we give that gift of really actively listening to one another, that also helps build that psychological safety, which taps on our emotional well being. I could go through each of these dimensions. I want to really explore the concepts where the enthusiasm is. So if you'd like to share an example of where trust was able to be leveraged in one of these dimensions, feel free to share. Otherwise, I'm going to just take a step in the next direction. So here, the key takeaway is that a holistic framework allows people to thrive and build trust in one another. And trust grows where whole person wellness is supported because people feel seen, safe, supported, and valued across all dimensions, which creates trust as a culture, not just a concept. So before we get into the details of each of these competency models, I wanted to talk about what elements do you feel wellness practitioners should demonstrate to build trust with the people that they're working with? Are there any skills or behaviors that a wellness practitioner should demonstrate to let people know that they are in alignment? It's fine if people are drawing a blank. What I'd like to explore together is the National Wellness Institute's competency model for wellness practitioners. And they've identified 5 areas that when we are working within the scope of these 5 areas, it builds trust with the people that we're working with. And so the first one is authenticity and self-awareness. The second one we've already kind of started to explore, which is that whole person and system approach. It's important to be inclusive and responsive in our practices. There is a strong emphasis on communication and connection, and of course, the legal and ethical principles. And so, just like the 6 dimensions of wellness interlock and impact one another, so too does the promotion competency model. And so, it's not just about one of these factors, but how these factors influence one another. You can see that laid out in this chart here visually, but we can explore it more in depth. So with domain 1, the key focus is grounding wellness work in self-knowledge, reflection, and ethical practice. And so this one at its most base is that when we are promoting well-being in the workplace, it's important that we are self-aware of where we're at in our own wellness journey and that we project an authentic self into the workplace. And I think this is really important when it comes to the way well-being has been branded in the past of like everything needs to be perfect. It's this highly elevated, idealistic lifestyle where we eat exactly the right things and move exactly the right amount. And really, in reality, no one's perfect. And it's important to be authentic about where you're at with your colleagues and with your team. Because when we project authenticity, again, that lets people feel safe to also show up in an authentic way. And through that shared authenticity, we're able to be vulnerable with one another and move the well-being programming forward. Because if we're not being authentic with where the need is, we can't properly address it. Any questions about this first domain before we move forward? So the second domain, the whole person aspect, is about embracing wellness as being interconnected and that individuals are complex. It's not just one factor that's influencing their work or their burnout or their ability to be compassionate. There's multiple factors that need to be addressed. And the tagline here is see the whole person, support the whole system. And I do feel like we've spent some time on this one. So I'm going to move forward, but please feel free if you have any questions or insights, you're welcome to share them in chat. So the third is inclusive and responsive practices. Its key focus is uplifting diverse experiences and reducing barriers through cultural responsiveness. And so here we want to acknowledge and minimize personal bias. We want to understand oppression and privilege and lived experiences. We show respect for all forms of diversity. We're always person-centered. And when we're inquiring with someone, it's important to show up with active listening and non-judgment. So through that, we can identify and support change through barrier recognition, and we can adapt strategies to cultural and geographical need. Domain 4 is all about communication and connection. And so here, it's all about using communication as a bridge for wellness engagement and culture building. If we're not communicating authentically, it's not going to lead to enthusiastic engagement, right? If we want to foster a culture of well-being, we need to understand the best possible way to communicate that to others so that they are responsive and we have buy-in. So it's important for us to understand how leadership and culture shape wellness. It's important to really understand how we want to communicate wellness value. And of course, we want to collaborate across disciplines to sustain wellness efforts. Connection is the heart of transformation. And finally, we have domain 5, which is all about upholding professional integrity, trust, and legal responsibilities. Here we see confidentiality and compliance, and also reporting uh, with certain laws and knowing when to apply that. It's important that we stay within our professional scope of practice. And when we find ourselves operating, or when we find ourselves maybe bumping up against that scope of practice edge, that we know when and how to refer someone out to a resource that can help them fulfill the need that's outside of our scope. So we need to maintain transparency and ethical relationships with our clients and colleagues. And I just want to pause here um, to honestly just to model what making a small moment for wellness at work can look like. It can just be a slide that prompts people, what do we need right now? If you tap into how you're feeling, we're about halfway through the hour that we have together. If you need to stand up and stretch or take care of any human aspects, please feel free. This time is really for you, and we want you to not just utilize the learning opportunities, but also practice um, what it looks like to make space for well-being. So if you need to grab some water, please feel free. And so now this is really my favorite piece. We get to dive into the theories that build trust by, what is the word? Prioritizing. Yeah, sorry. By prioritizing autonomy and self-determination, and how we can shape our work environment to enhance people's belief that they can engage in well-being at work. So let's go ahead and take a look at these 3 key wellness theories that build trust. The first one is the trans-theoretical model, which sounds big and technical, but it's also known as the stages of change. And I'm curious, who here may have worked with the stages of change within their role? Has anybody heard of this particular theory? And I appreciate you letting me know because it can help me gauge how much time and how I can help people really pick up on the key takeaways. So the trans-theoretical model is all about behavior change, and that's essentially what we're trying to do as wellness practitioners or wellness champions in our workplace. We're asking the question, how do we support ourselves and our colleagues for making behavior changes that positively impact our well-being and our health outcomes? And so this theory lays out 5 stages of readiness for adopting new health behaviors. And why this is important is because when we meet people where they're at in their readiness to change, it allows them to trust that we're not going to push them into doing something they're not ready to do, which builds uncertainty, fear, anxiety, resentment, and can lose people's enthusiasm or their desire to participate. And so the key principle here is that change is a process, not a single event, and it takes time to move through these stages. And we can dive into what these stages look like. Just want to pause to see if anybody has any questions on this right off the bat. And so stages of change are these five um, cognitive and behavioral stages. The first few are cognitive, and so there isn't a outward behavior that's attached to the stage yet. Pre-contemplative is when people are engaging in a behavior that may potentially be harmful. However, they're not aware of the potential harm, and they're not thinking about changing their behavior. So there's no intention of taking an action. And so with this, just to kind of give an example, I may not be aware of the potential harmful effects of staring at a screen during my workday for several hours, right? And so if I'm not aware that there is a problem, I might not consider taking steps to reduce that harm to my eyes. And so then I would be pre-contemplative. I don't know there's a problem, and I'm just status quo. Now, the contemplation is the first stage that we see um, any movement toward change. And in contemplation, it's when people start to begin thinking about change. And so they might become aware of some consequences or of a problem that is presented by the behavior, but they're pretty ambivalent about actually taking the outward steps to change the behavior. And so this might be, to go with our example, me experiencing some eye strain, or maybe my vision begins to get blurry. So I'm struggling with it. It's uncomfortable, but I'm so busy, there's really not time to address it. And so I'm just going to keep going with the status quo, but I'm beginning to think now of what the impacts of the behavior are and how they're serving us. The third stage is preparation, and this one is really exciting because it's actually the first time that we see an outward reflection of the mental and emotional labor that was going on in the contemplation phase. And so in preparation, we're saying, I'm getting ready to change. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm taking steps to increase my likelihood. So this might be when I'm in preparation stage, I might be researching articles on eye strain. I might be looking at the price of blue blocking glasses to reduce the blue light damage, things of that nature. Just getting ready to change. Action is pretty self-explanatory, but this is the one where we finally have made the change. So this might be, I've bought the glasses, the blue blocking glasses in the preparation stage, and I'm going to start wearing them at work. And so we're actively modifying the behavior. And then in maintenance, we see the behavior has now the new behavior has now become the status quo, and it's suddenly easier to engage in the target behavior than it was in the behavior that was modified, right? And so this might look like, well, now that I wear my blue blocking glasses, I feel a difference. My eyes feel better. And so really, I don't even have to think about putting them on. It's just automatic because I enjoy that intrinsic benefit to the new behavior. And then there is a sixth stage that's worth mentioning, which is the relapse stage. And this can occur at any point in time in the model, and it can put somebody at any point in the model as well. And so somebody who is in preparation stage and they're looking to get glasses, they're doing the research, maybe they even bought the glasses, but then uh, they just got so busy at work, it really just fell off their radar, and they are now not even really thinking about it anymore. And so that would be an example of somebody who was in preparation and relapsed back to pre-contemplation, if that makes sense. And does anybody have any examples of when they felt like they were in one of these stages of change when it came to wellness behaviors in the workplace?
I started taking a walk, at least to like try to take a walk a couple times a day, just a quick brief walk. And I do really well, like maybe through the summer, but then winter hits and it's cold outside. I don't want to go back out there, so I stopped doing it, and I could fall back to maybe later, and then it goes another several months before I start doing it again.
Thank you for sharing that personal example. I appreciate the vulnerability and authenticity there, Erin. And yeah, that's exactly a great example of what it could look like to move through all of these stages. And then, due to factors that might not even be internal factors, it could be an external factor, like you said, the winter, that can actually spark a relapse that then brings us to a previous stage, such as maybe I'm just thinking about going for a walk, but it's so cold out there. I'm ambivalent and I don't want to go, right? So thank you for that. So, just to kind of summarize, that trans-theoretical model builds trust because when we recognize where people are at in their stages of change, it helps them feel secure because when we push someone to change when they're not ready, it builds uncertainty, anxiety, fear, and things that can then cause disenchantment for the person and actually harm their ability to want to make a change, right? And so this could be an example. Um, there's a few people in the office who are interested in going on a walk every day during their lunch break. And another colleague would actually prefer to stay in and have quiet time reading, and they have no intention of walking, right? And so if I was the wellness practitioner at that workplace and I was really pushy about, no, everybody has to go on the walk, it's mandatory, that would be pushing somebody from contemplation into action. And that push causes a break in trust, really. Um, and so it's important that we really meet people where they're at. And when we're not sure where they're at, we ask questions so that we can understand what's important to people and also how confident they are in their ability to change. Any questions on stages of change before we move on to self-determination? So this theory here I'm excited to dive into because Erin, you actually tapped on this with your explanation as to what trust looks like in the workplace from earlier. And you mentioned the word freedom, which to me brings about that sense of autonomy and self-determination. And I have a few questions here. I'm going to throw them out. If you have a response you'd like to share, you're more than welcome to type it in chat. But just to kind of reflect on where these might already be present in our workplace, where do I feel a strong sense of autonomy and choice in my life or my work? So, in what places of our workplace do we feel like we have that strong sense of I have the ability to make choices for myself in a way that honors my well being?
During my breaks, I completely up to me what I do. So
Yeah. And I think it can even expand, right, into how and how we perform our roles and that respect that comes with feeling trusted to make decisions for yourself so that your workflow is representative of your values, your purpose, and your interest. So here we have the social cognitive theory, which is all about the environment in which we're working and the beliefs that that environment instill in us. Uh-oh, sorry about that. I wasn't ready to. Here we go. So the core concept with the social cognitive theory is that behavior is influenced by a dynamic interaction between personal factors, environmental influences, and behavior itself. And this concept is called reciprocal determinism. Nope, hold on, I'm sorry. Let's bring that back. Sorry, for some reason I lost the full window. It was just the browser window. Always fun little aspects to
We
virtual trainings,
we
right?
get a better view of your colleague there, Lydia.
Yeah, I know, right? Uh, she is living her fully autonomous life, that is for sure. I think I might have to go all the way out and pull it up like this. Here we go. And now I can pull you guys up and share. Okay, sorry about that. So the core concept between of the social cognitive theory is that behavior is influenced by a dynamic interaction between personal factors, environmental influences, and behavior itself. And with that, we can look at these two elements, the environment and the beliefs. So beliefs are things like self-efficacy or our belief in our ability to succeed at doing something. And outcome expectations are the beliefs that a behavior will lead to the desired result. So something like this might be, I believe in my ability to complete the online training, and I want to complete the online training because my expectation is that attending the training will lead to the result of me improving my ability to perform that um, aspect of my role, right, at my job. And so an example of how the environment or the external factors play into this are things like social norms, role models, access to resources, and supported systems. And so these factors, they shape and are also shaped by the individual's beliefs and behaviors. And so it creates this loop that we can look at here, that our environment can inform our belief, and our beliefs inform our behaviors. And then furthermore, our behaviors influence our environment. And so this is a circular, both way model. And so how this looks in the workplace is something like supportive workplace culture increases self-efficacy. So in a work environment where we feel supported and recognized, we might believe in our ability to change more than if we were in a work environment where we may be criticized or any other number of things that would then influence the belief about ourselves, that, oh, I'm not good at my job, or I'm just not skilled enough in this area, as opposed to, I don't know how to do that yet, but I know where to go to improve upon it. And so you can see that difference in how the belief impacts our behavior. So when we believe in our ability, we're more likely to engage in a wellness behavior. And when we engage in a wellness behavior, that improves things like the social norm and that cultural piece, which then reinforces that culture of well-being. Now, can anybody give me an example of when their beliefs influenced their behavior at work? And when they began engaging in that behavior at work, how did that impact the overall social environment? Does anybody have some lived experience of what this might look like in the workplace? So, for me, it might look like having a supervisor who is um, generously acknowledging and recognizing their employees for their strengths and coaching to those strengths, right? And so um, holding those strengths up so that we can build the person's belief in their own ability to be successful. And when people feel successful in what they're or in what they can do, they're more likely to try. And when they begin trying, that's going to impact how other people around them either want to try or not.
Lydia, like one of the things I've been thinking throughout this whole training is just this, well, coming up with data, right? And maybe this is just because I'm about to talk to my management team and I'm like, okay, a lot of theories on wellness data, but like, when I'm trying to build trust with management, a lot of it's like, show me a way that you can prove this is working or this is going somewhere, rather than this is a really cool philosophy to have. And it's kind of, and so I love that example only because it reminded me of when I was a supervisor, me and this other supervisor just started tracking, right? We track turnover in our units and we track turnover in everyone else's in our office units as well. And then, and we were simply paying attention, right? Like, and we didn't know exactly what it was going to do, but it did demonstrate a behavior that the two of us who were actually focused on increasing resiliency, like it impacted. I mean, it showed. I mean, and I think it would show anyone who was literally, like just keeping score created its own incentive in a way, type thing. But we were keeping score probably because we were incentivized in the first place. We wanted greater resilience, type thing. But it was an actual thing. So I don't know. I don't know if that's like the impacting both, but for me, it was one of those things of like simply counting the data creates attention to it. And if resiliency and retention isn't counted, well, then all the other parts of it, that are data driven about our job are what occupies, I think, leadership of like, what's wait times, what's, service look like, what are outcomes, type thing. So I think that's a lot of what I've done. Only the only concrete thing I've done at this job is start to count things.
Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate you weighing in there, and it's such a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining today. And that was a really good example and a really good point of how we can utilize or leverage different information, different aspects of communication, to impress upon certain beliefs that then can influence behavior. And so, like you said, the data can instill a belief in our leadership, right? If they see the factors weighing in such a way, they might have the belief that this worksite wellness program is going to improve the well-being of the workplace. And because they believed that, they were willing to initiate on the wellness programming, which influenced the behavior of the employees. And as the behavior of the employees expands and enhances into that holistic framework that we looked at earlier, the more the overall culture of the workplace improves. So that's one way we can see that flow through leadership and team building. Yep. And so just to summarize this last theory, it's important that we target beliefs in our workplace when creating wellness programming. And the two factors that are most important to consider when changing behavior is the importance or the perceived value. It can also be known as the motivation, right? What is the need that's being addressed that adds value? And then we have confidence, which is our self-efficacy or our ability or our belief in our ability to perform the behavior. We can modify the environment to improve well-being, and that could look like policy changes, peer support programs. That's that creating a system that makes it easier for people to engage in health behaviors. And then fostering a feedback loop that sustains positive change by being mindful of the fact that beliefs impact, beliefs and environment impact our ability to activate on behavior change. So I just want to check in on time. It seems like we're at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate everybody's participation today. And I want to invite you to our second installment of this content, which will be more experiential, more workshop-y, and less lecture heavy, even though I did hopefully try to make it interesting with the conversation. So I hope you all join us on June 30th for our second edition of this series. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email, or you're more than welcome to grab an appointment on Calendly. So thank you guys. I appreciate you being wellness champions and promoting wellness in your workplaces. And I hope to see you next time.